Uh, One of the rather two states they just mentioned about making MSP for pulses and oilseeds effective. And I have also noted that Rajasthan Chief Minister also expressed that if Rajasthan get better irrigation in 13 districts, they can spread area under mustard in a very big way, and that will also help in achieving self-sufficiency. The states also talked about, particularly Northeast, how they were expanding area under oil palm cultivation. Like Arunachal Pradesh, they have a target of 40,000. So this year they are bringing 4,000 hectare under this. Similarly, Tripura and like that. So mainly the demand which came was that MSP in case of pulses and edible oil need to be made more effective.
Sir, I have a couple of questions. Number one, because what we see from the agenda that it was proposed that this pulses you want to increase up to certain number like 510 lakh ton, something like that, and also for edible oil there's about 40% increase that that is the target. So that's also much less than what we actually require. That's number one. And number 2 point, sir, you talked about diversification of crops, but the same year, this year, because of wheat and rice problem, our secretary, our ministers, they are asking states to grow more wheat and rice. That's quite, contrast to what the government policy is. So a clarity on that. And the last question, sir, you talked about cooperative federalism. I think Naveen Patnaik had raised this question. If there is a problem between center and states, Niti Aayog should be the ombudsman. Can you just, give a comment on that?
As far as pulses are concerned, if you look at data for last 5-6 years, we have made substantive progress in increasing production output of pulses. And in fact, we are exporting little bit pulses also, and we are importing some pulses. In the case of pulses, we are now deficit only in masur and to some extent in arhar. In the other kind of pulses, we are very close to self-sufficiency, and it has happened because last 5 years, there is a big increase in production of especially chickpea, chana. So in case of pulses, our import dependence is now less than 7-8%. But in case of edible oil, the import dependence is still almost 50%. So that's why independent mission on palm oil, other oil seeds, the situation in case of oil seeds is quite serious as far as dependence on import is concerned. I'm coming to that. You just asked that if that is the case, then why government, some official made statement about increasing area under wheat and rice. In the case of wheat, we had surplus of 10%. If some shock happened, wheat and rice are also staple crop. If there's a very serious shock, which was the terminal heat during the month of April this time, because of which there was a decline in wheat production of 6 million ton, and Government of India gave double the quantity of what was the normal kind of PDS requirement. We started Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, under which PDS was almost doubled. So that resulted in giving almost more than 60 million ton of wheat and rice in PDS.
Dr. Chand, I would say that this was, somewhat extraneous to what happened at the meeting. So maybe they could take it offline. Okay. Yeah. But your second question was on the role of Niti. You use the term ombudsman. That's not the term that I think is appropriate. I think, though, we have certainly tried to be something different, an intermediary and an honest broker. Both CO and I are new. Let me ask Dr. Paul, in a sense, of how up till now Niti has attempted to be helpful. You mentioned the case of Odisha. I think you've had some experience of that.
Well, very briefly, the mandate of Niti includes cooperative federalism as well as competitive federalism, among other few mandates that are enshrined in the order that constituted the Niti Aayog. In terms of cooperative federalism, Niti has been involved in a constant and systematic engagement with the state governments. We visualize this, the state governments visualize Niti as a friend of the state in the union government system. They take part in discussions. They look upon us to solve some of their pending issues, some facilitation that is required at times for ministerial decisions and making the pitch for the stand of the state. The decisions are taken on merit, but as the Honorable Vice Chairman said, as an honest broker. So we like to see ourselves as a bridge between the state governments and the union government in an honest way. At the same time, we also believe that we can play a role. Since we are a think tank, we get voices and ideas from all sources, all types of stakeholders. We have ideas to offer to the state governments in specific sectors where they may be ideating about how to improve that particular sector, economy, agriculture, Ayush, health, and so on. And they are an exchange of views from the capacity available to the Niti Aayog with the state government is also helpful. So it's a two-way traffic that has already been going on, and we look upon the emerging phase of Niti Aayog to strengthen this systematically and deliver on that.
Which is what I'd like the CEO who has been leading this initiative. Do you want to talk a little bit about how we see the way ahead?
Yeah, and just to come back to today's meeting, the Honorable Prime Minister made it very clear that this is a very collaborative relationship, and the states have a critical role to play in the development of India. And so on that basis, we are now, and this was again the theme of today's meeting is the collaborative federalism, and how the states can contribute and how we can collaborate with them in taking the inclusive growth agenda forward. And so in Niti now, we are, the outreach to states, which was, as Dr. Paul mentioned, which has been going on for a long time, the role of an honest broker. So now we are continuing to work with the states to see how we can partner with them and collaborate further on their vision for India and which is basically about inclusive growth. So they need to help them with capacity building, initially envisioning their future goal, how we can work with them to strengthen their capacity. And so I think this collaborative exercise is moving forward. So I think that's important to note.
सर, मीनाक्षी भट्टाचार्य, सनमार्ग हिंदी डेली न्यूज़पेपर। सर, मैं जानना चाहती हूँ कि ममता बनर्जी हमेशा कई बार कहते रहते हैं कि केंद्र से उन्हें सहायता नहीं मिलता जो जितना उनको चाहिए, तो इस बार उनका क्या सजेशन था या कोई कुछ कंप्लेन था उनका?
शायद मैं सीईओ से, क्योंकि मेरी हिंदी इतनी बढ़िया नहीं।
हाँ, ममता बनर्जी उपस्थित रही। उन्होंने अपने स्टेट के बारे में, जो स्टेट्स के इश्यूज थे उनके बारे में उन्होंने बोला, और जो G20 के बारे में, जिसके बारे में प्रधानमंत्री और फॉरेन मिनिस्टर ने कहा कि स्टेट्स के क्या अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ होंगे, अपने स्टेट्स के प्रोग्राम्स और बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस को हाईलाइट करने के लिए ममता बनर्जी ने उसको वेलकम किया। उन्होंने कहा कि वेस्ट बंगाल विल कम फॉरवर्ड टू शोकेस इट्स अचीवमेंट्स, और उन्होंने बाकी कुछ जो इश्यूज अपने स्टेट्स के बारे में जो उन्होंने उठाया, आई थिंक देयर इज अ रिटन स्टेटमेंट एज वेल विच विल बी हैप्पी टू शेयर विद यू।
आसिफ साहब,
मैं एसएम आसिफ, इन दिनों से मेरा सवाल ये है कि जो मुख्यमंत्री आए थे उन्होंने एजुकेशन पॉलिसी पर कोई डिस्कशन किया क्या?
क्या तो था
I'll just start and then Honorable VC can please add. I think अगर एक चीज़ जिसके ऊपर पूरी कंसेंसस और ज़ोरदार कंसेंसस है वो ये नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी की जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है, strong consensus, and Chief Minister after Chief Minister highlighted the steps they have taken. And I think this has come out very strongly. NEP had बहुत अच्छा मंथन पहले भी हुआ, उसके बाद भी हुआ, और उसका रिज़ल्ट ये है कि सारा देश इस पॉलिसी के अराउंड एक्शन भी ले रहा है और एक तरफ से बढ़ रहा है. मैं अपने सामने देख रहा हूँ जैसे मध्य प्रदेश ने 8,000 आंगनवाड़ी सेंटर्स को कोलोकेटेड स्कूल के साथ कोलोकेशन करके आगे मुद्दा बढ़ाया है. अगर उत्तर प्रदेश देखता हूँ तो वहाँ अभ्युदय योजना के अंतर्गत 5,000 मॉडल स्कूल दिए जा रहे हैं. J&K में टैबलेट्स दिए जा रहे हैं. हरियाणा में बैग फ्री स्कूल्स की परिकल्पना की. नागालैंड में लाइट हाउस स्कूल. कहने का मतलब यह है कि दिस वाज समथिंग वेरी स्ट्रांग, वेरी हार्टनिंग, एंड आई थिंक दिस विल बी वेरी ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव, truly transformative for India going forward.
सीओ से बुलाने से पहले मैं ये भी कहना चाहूँगा कि it was very clear that Honorable Prime Minister believed that this was indeed central to his aspirations and vision for the country, and to the point where he said that, look, this is something that needs to be monitored literally every month by each chief minister. And he also called upon the Honorable Education Minister, Shri Dharmendra Pradhan, to intervene in the meeting. As somebody who was fairly new to these discussions, what interested me was, of course, states where the agenda was substantially on elementary education, and states where the agenda was much more on higher education, because the agenda distinguished between school education and higher education. But let me hand over to CEO if you wanted to add anything on this. Yeah.
We'll take a very few questions now. Next question is from there, then 122, then 2 questions from back there. And after that, we'll take a call.
Sir, Tarun Sharma from Z Business. Sir, I just want to know, any particular target have you set for the edible oil production in India for next 5 years? Secondly, and which is the most appropriate crop which will give the good result in that country?
I would say that this is really somewhat extraneous to the discussion that took place. It's for the Agriculture Ministry to set a target. That certainly was not the framework within which the discussion came. Unless, Ramesh ji, do you want to?
मैं ब्रीफली ये कहूँगा कि मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर ने ऑयल सीड मिशन में ये बनाया है कि अगले 5 साल में और अगले 10 साल में हम इंपोर्ट डिपेंडेंस हाफ जो 50% है उसको 25% से नीचे ले आएंगे. लेकिन ये मीटिंग में स्पेसिफिक नंबर नहीं डिस्कस हुए, लेकिन मिनिस्ट्री ने अपना जो है प्लान ये बनाया हुआ है.
122.
Sir, I have 2 questions. One is that, as we understand, some states have raised the issue of increasing the state share in central taxes and extension of GST compensation issues. So was there any response from the Prime Minister or central side? And number 2, sir, was there any discussion on freebies, the culture of freebies?
The answer to the second was no, and the answer to the first was I didn't hear much discussion, because I would say that states were very disciplined to stick to the agenda, and I think the meeting gained from the fact that 6 months of preparation went into the agenda. But on the first point, I would say such discussion as there was of timely release of funds rather than asking for more. CEO?
No, I agree. I think that, there were general discussions on resources and so on, but they stuck to the agenda. And I think the spirit was more of, focusing on the 4 themes which were set as the agenda. So these issues really didn't come up.
Yeah, 46.
सर मैं रविकांत हूँ एबीपी न्यूज़ से। तेलंगाना के जो चीफ मिनिस्टर हैं उन्होंने पत्र लिख करके बहिष्कार किया था, तो क्या आज तेलंगाना पर कोई बातचीत हुई है और जो मुद्दे उन्होंने उठाए थे उसको एड्रेस किया गया है?
Sir, just to inform you that yesterday there was a clarification issued.
क्या तो आपको जानकारी होगी कि कल नीति आयोग ने एक प्रेस स्टेटमेंट जारी किया था विच वाज पुट आउट ऑन पीआईबी, सो दैट एक्सप्लेन्स द रिस्पॉन्स. आई थिंक दैट रिस्पॉन्स इज एडिक्वेट. और आज मीटिंग में तेलंगाना के बारे में देयर वाज नो डिस्कशन. बिहार के चीफ मिनिस्टर वाज अनवेल, इसलिए उन्होंने पार्टिसिपेट नहीं किया.
ये आगे दीजिएगा, लास्ट क्वेश्चन.
हेलो सर, अर्बन गवर्नेंस पे कोई बात हुई थी? बिकॉज दैट वाज वन ऑफ द एजेंडाज दैट वाज लिस्टेड, राइट? अर्बन गवर्नेंस रिफॉर्म्स एंड टैक्सेस.
Well, I think before I ask any of my colleagues, none of whom, is a specialist in this area, I can only repeat what Honorable Prime Minister said at the beginning, and to some extent said also in the context of G20. What he said at the beginning is urbanization is going to be a reality, going to be a fact. There's nothing you can do about it. You can do it well or you can do it badly, but this is a train coming at you. Now, because there is a lot in the written statements, we in NITI, because these written statements arrived fairly recently, will spend a lot of time. Certainly, there was a very detailed discussion at the Chief Secretary level in Himachal, in Dharamshala, I should say. Again, I think this is one issue where there is rightly a great deal of heterogeneity, between states, between the Northeast states on the one hand and those states who are present, which have large urban populations. I think the most detailed discussion was probably in the statement by Gujarat, is my recollection. But would anybody want to add to that?
I think you clarified well about how the Prime Minister spoke of the importance of urbanization and urban governance in particular, service delivery, infrastructure. Urbanization is taking place, as the VC mentioned, and he put out that it was really important for all the states to focus and build on the agenda which was already discussed at the Chief Secretary's conference. So urbanization was one of the important themes discussed today.
So as this is last one, absolutely last one, 76. After that, we are not in a position to take any questions.
Hello, sir. This is Rishi from the Hindu Business Line. Was there a discussion on municipal finances? And if there was there also a discussion related with municipal bonds? They have not taken up as they was intended. So if there was a discussion on this, what was the nature of discussion on municipal bonds? And what was the nature of discussion on municipal finances?
I would repeat what I said. In skimming what had come in from the states, there was reference in some of them to municipal finances, not particularly to municipal bonds. I'm trying to recall, at Dharamshala there was some discussion of of financial instruments and what that would take. I don't know whether anybody else recollects from the discussion today.
No, I think today the discussion was more on broader urban governance and the need to improve that, but as well as, and that included everything, including infrastructure, service delivery, how do you deal with that? But the details of municipal finance and municipal bonds was not discussed today.
Thank you very much, sir. This brings us to the closer of the press conference. Press release has been uploaded on PIB website. PM's speeches are not there because they were not open.